Thank you all for being here. My name is Ann Phelan, and I'm the Manager of Resources and Engagement at the Perkins Transition Center. Our virtual hub of all transition programming supports all disabilities. We create an inclusive safe space today, so we welcome you. We are recording today. So if you wish to change your name and turn off your camera for more privacy, you can just click on the three dots by your name and rename yourself to anything you wish. We thank you all for being here. If you would kindly add your state and the age of your child. If you're a professional, we welcome you here. We have a lot of professionals registered for our event, and we'd love to know where you work. And if you want parents to reach out to you or share your contact information, feel free. And I notice we have some advocates with disabilities here. You're very welcome. This is a space for you as well. We are recording this. You will also get copies of slides and recordings at a later date. And we will have questions and answers throughout. Katherine is really good with fielding those as she sees them, but we'll have an opportunity at the end. So with that said, let me just give you a little introduction today. This is part 3 of a lunchtime 4-part series on sexuality. And we talk about this because we know that sexuality and healthy relationships is really important. And it's not often talked about for people with disabilities. And we believe it's vital that we talk about it. And there's several reasons. We want to create safety and prevent any exploitation or abuse among the population of people with disabilities. And if we're not talking about how to have a healthy boundary and relationship, then there's not an assumption that people will learn how to do that on their own. I sure didn't, and probably you didn't either. So that's a really important consideration. We also want to foster self-determination, and part of that is empowering and creating self-autonomy. And by talking about sexuality and healthy relationships, that is a process that we believe in. We also believe that when we teach social skills and sexual health and social relationship boundary support, it really is empowering, and it helps ensure that when our individuals with disabilities, our students, our clients, our family members go into the community, they are interacting in a safe and healthy way. As a transition specialist, I've had many students who did not have the skills that they should have had when they were preparing to go to the community, and they encountered social challenges, whether it's with other people with disabilities or the neurotypical population, because they didn't have the boundaries. We know social media is a really incredible place. It's a rich and robust experience, but also there's some territory there that can be potentially dangerous. So we'll be talking about that today. Let's create an inclusive environment. I am so excited to introduce my teacher and colleague, Katherine from Elevatus Training, who will lead us today. Welcome, Katherine. Welcome back.
Thanks, Anne. It's really nice to be here with all of you. And maybe you've come to the first 2 sessions, so welcome back. And if this is your first session with Perkins and Elevatus, welcome. I'm Katherine McLaughlin, and I've been a sexuality educator and trainer for over 30 years. And I work primarily with students with cognitive impairments around sexuality, but also lots of different disabilities as well. And one of the things that I focus on is sexual self-advocacy, and that really connects with what Anne was saying as well around self-determination, speaking up for what you want in your life. And the first session we talked about some tips and tools for answering questions as a parent or a professional, and also responding to different behaviors. The second one was on sexual self-advocacy. What does that mean? How can we promote that in the people we're supporting or in ourselves? And then today we're going to focus on healthy boundaries, types of relationships and public and private. And there's a lot there. And Anne talked about this a little bit too. A lot of the issues that might come up, for example, losing a job, many times have to do with some of this content around healthy boundaries in the workplace. I did have the opportunity to do some work with Project Search, which is an employment training program for people with IDD. And what they were saying is people were losing their jobs, not because they couldn't do the job, but because they didn't understand how to navigate relationships in the workplace. And so that's just one example of some of the things that can happen due to a lack of education. So what I've been encouraging people to think about, especially as a parent, what your role is, and also as a professional, and even for yourself to get information and learn about these topics. You can provide information or learn information, and we are including in every single session resource lists for professionals, for parents, and for self-advocates or people with disabilities. So even if you had a topic in mind that we're not talking about today, there's lots of great resources for you. Also, we want to listen if we're supporting others. We want to model behaviors, provide support, and answer questions honestly. And Janine, who's part of Perkins as well, talked about one of the things we discussed in the first session was respond, don't react. And I think that's good for all of us. And I think especially around sexuality and relationships, we tend to react to this topic. And what I've always giving people the tip of respond. Let's try to just be calm about it, and answer questions honestly. And also give positive messages too, that, we were all taught, or maybe not all of us, but many of us were taught that this is sort of a scary thing or something to be really anxious about in general. And then you add disability and the statistics around sexual abuse, and you can feel really anxious and nervous about this whole topic. And so really trying to be more positive about it, and managing our anxiety and worries, but having calm, um, supportive, empowering conversations. So today the focus is teaching healthy boundaries, including different types of relationships and public versus private. So what are those different places, different topics that are public and private, different behaviors, ways of touching that are public and private. And then we're going to also explore types of touch and topics that we also have in different relationships. So we're really going to combine. We're going to talk about what are the different types of relationships, what is public and private, and then combine them together. So I mentioned an example of Project Search, talking about people with disabilities losing their job, not because they couldn't do the job or the task, but because they might have crossed a line in the workplace. What are some things that you've seen due to a lack of education around boundaries and relationships in public and private? What have you noticed in friends, in people you work with or live with? What have you noticed due to a lack of education? And you can put your ideas in the chat. Okay. And I'm seeing some things that I'll be sure to address. Okay, great. Yeah. Challenging behaviors come out when interacting with others in the community. Yeah, being victimized. Absolutely. No understanding of how to express sexuality. So a little unclear, confused, possibly. How do I express myself? Um, Not knowing the difference between relationship support and romantic relationships. Yes. Um, okay. And being blackmailed. Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of stories around scams online, and people saying that they're partners and send me money so I can come see you for your birthday. I'll take a bus to see you, and then never hearing from them again. And that's not just people with disabilities. That can happen to anyone as well. Students don't understand how touching someone else, I lost that one, it moved, can be inappropriate, sure. Be used by the woman who he was dating, yes. So you can be used because you're not understanding healthy relationships. worries my son is super inappropriate talking about sex. Yep. High risk for sexual abuse, problems with boundaries. Yes, all of those things. And a lot of people that work with some of these consequences say, a lot of it is these root topics, these foundational topics that are really a great place to start in talking about sexuality and healthy relationships, to really look at what are the different kinds of relationships that we're in and what is public and private. All right, thank you for that. And so we're going to talk about healthy boundaries, and really what we're focusing on are two sides to it. How to speak up if others are violating your boundaries or bothering you or harassing you. So it's also speaking up, but then also how do you avoid bothering others or crossing lines with others? And we can't eliminate everything, but we can certainly give some guidance around how you can think about different relationships in public and private. And then if you happen to cross a line, then you learn from it and you apologize and you repair the relationship and you learn from it. So it's not just about people with disabilities learning boundaries, but also speaking up for their own boundaries too. Understand what the different types of relationships are. We're going to talk about that. How do we relate to the people in these different types of relationships? How do we touch them? How do we share information? What kind of information do we share? Right. Okay. Yeah. So you're talking about how sort of that public-private kind of thing. He's very focused on private topics and talking to lots of people about it. So we'll talk about that as well, Sarah. Thank you. So talking about relationships, they're between two people. Sometimes we talk to one another and interact and are together. We talk differently and interact differently depending on the relationship. So you can start off with asking, like, can anyone name a type of relationship that you're in with another person? And people will say, my best friend, my mom, my teacher, the bus driver. So all these different people that are in people's lives. And then we can categorize them. And you may also all be aware of the Circles program, which is a whole program around boundaries and healthy relationships. And this is sort of a similar approach. But then we can categorize the different kinds of relationships into these categories. So close family and friends. So we have close family, so people we live with or we see a lot, friends, same thing. Then we've got casual friends, acquaintances, and groups, which is another category. So these are people we know, but we're not real close to them. And we'll talk about each of these more. And then helping professionals. And the reason that we're adding this category is there's many stories about people with disabilities. Well, for example, there was a local story about a young man with an intellectual disability was lost in the woods, and people were calling his name and he didn't respond because they were strangers. So we want to also have this category of people we may not know that are there to help you. They're paid to support you and help you. For example, fire and rescue. And I think we've done a disservice because we've taught people with disabilities that strangers are dangerous. So there's stranger danger, there's high alert about strangers. And, when we look at sexual abuse statistics, usually it's somebody the person knows, it's not a stranger. So there's this myth that all strangers are scary and that people could never hurt you. So we do have to dispel that myth and be sure that we talk about strangers as most strangers are really nice people. And of course, you want to be careful with people who are strangers. But you also have to be aware that sometimes these other kinds of relationships, people in those can hurt you as well. Okay. And then the last type, which is sort of a separate one, is more of a sexual romantic relationship. And someone put that in the chat, like, how do you describe the difference of those? So we're going to talk about these different kinds of relationships. You can use these slides, and actually I will put the link to the slides if you didn't receive the. You'll be sent them tomorrow. They've been sent ahead, but if you didn't get them, you can click on that link and you'll have the slides for today and lots of different handouts. So you can show the slide and say, okay, this is close family and friends. How do we know? What is it about this picture that tells us that they're close? So I'll pose that to all of you and you could put your ideas in the chat. Like, how do we know that these three young girls are close? So what do you see in the picture? So I'll have you just put, if someone wants to put a couple ideas in there. Everyone's happy and hugging, they're smiling, comfortable, close. Yes, sitting close, smiling. Yeah, so we can see that they are physically close, right? They've got their cheek on their forehead and it looks like the smiling, the happy, the comfortable, that tells us that they know each other really well and that they're really relaxed and comfortable. Maybe there's a lot of trust between them. They all have similar coloring of hair and skin. Maybe they're related. We don't really know, but they definitely look happy and relaxed and comfortable, like you all said. So we want to talk about how they're touching one another and then what are the feelings that people have in these relationships? Yes, feel safe with each other. Yes. So again, we can go to the next group, casual friends, family, and groups. And again, we can ask those same questions. How do we know that they're casual? And we can see here that they all have a uniform on. So that shows us they're part of a team, they're part of a group. So people who are casual friends would be your classmates, your coworkers. These are people you know, they're not strangers or you know them, but you don't really do anything outside of how you know them. So this basketball team, they all practice basketball and play together, but we can say that this group is casual. Maybe a couple of them are really close friends and they do stuff outside of basketball. But right now we're just looking at all of them together are casual friends as well. And they're kind of standing close to each other because they're posing for a picture. But they're not hanging all over each other like the last picture. They look pretty comfortable too, if we think about the feelings they might have. They look, relaxed, familiar with each other. Um, so that's another example of a type of relationship. And then this one, we could say, how do we know this is a helping professional? They have a stethoscope around their neck. Maybe they're a doctor or a nurse. They've got the scrubs on. So we can tell that they're working, that they have this uniform on. Um, then we can also talk about, well, how do you feel when you're with helping professionals? And that can be kind of split because it could be a helping professional that you see every day at school or at work. And that's a different experience because you know them somewhat, but they're still considered casual, you know? Um, or it could be a new helping professional. You're going to a new doctor or a dentist. And so you're a little nervous because you don't know them and you don't know what the experience is going to be like. Then we can talk about strangers and how can we tell that this picture, they're strangers. And they're not sitting very close to each other. There's definitely space between them. They're not speaking to one another. It looks like public transportation, maybe a subway or something, and that's where you would see strangers. So you can also talk about how do you feel with strangers? And what you probably have noticed is people with disabilities are very, like I mentioned, heightened, on alert about strangers. Um, and so we want to talk more about, yep, there's lots of strangers in our lives. Where do you see them? And again, most strangers are not going to hurt you. And then the last type was really a separate kind of relationship in our lives, but this is a romantic sexual relationship. And the reason I say romantic and sexual is that some people in their relationships, it's really just romantic and it's more they're a couple, but they're not very sexual. They might kiss or hold hands, so that's sort of more romantic. And then sexual would be more, of doing different sexual acts together, and it could be a combination as well. Great. So a question, what about employer and job coach, casual friends group, but also might share more personal info with them? This is a little gray area. Yeah. So I think like a job coach, I think of as a helping professional. And you're right, that one's a little tricky because there's some helping professionals where we might talk more personally with, but not all of them. So that is one of those gray areas, and we want to really just pull that out. And I'll show you that on a handout too, how we can really talk about that difference. But I would say your employer or a job coach is a helping professional. And how do we know these two are in a sexual romantic relationship? We don't really know, but it kind of seems like it. And somebody said to me recently that it looks like they're in a love bubble right there. So it's a little different than being close to family and friends. It's got more of a romantic, kind of snuggly sort of feeling to it. And then we want to talk about, well, who are all the different people in your life? And what kind of a relationship are they to you? So, who are your close family and friends? And they could take pictures of them or they could write their names down. And then, who are your casual friends or groups that you're part of? And this, again, could be classmates, coworkers, basketball team, Special Olympics, self-advocacy group. So, these are more casual friends and groups. Who are the helping professionals in your life? What about strangers? Where do you see strangers? And then are you in a sexual romantic relationship as well? Okay, yes. So there's a comment, my son does not understand strangers at all. So yeah, it might be doing something around where do you see strangers that you might want to say people you don't know, you've never met, might be a little more concrete around strangers, but maybe you're talking more about how to relate to them. But we'll talk more about that. The thing that can come up for people with disabilities is they have family and helping professionals in their life. Not any friends, not any casual friends, they're not part of any groups, all of those pieces. So that can be the thing that you want to focus on is how do we build up these different types of relationships in people's lives? So how do you make friends? How do you keep friends? So how would you categorize people they interact with on a regular basis, but don't really like or consider to be friends, coworkers, classmates? I would say they are casual friends. You know them, you spend time with them, but you don't do anything outside of how you know them. So your classmates, you know them, you've been in school all year with them, but you don't do anything outside of it. So this would be more casual. And then another piece that we want to add, because I know Anne referenced it as well, is one of the things we want to teach too is that online relationships are casual relationships. First of all, they might be strangers, but then once you get to know somebody online, they're casual, and that they can't be a close friendship or a sexual romantic relationship until you meet them face to face. And it's recommended you meet in a public place. Maybe you bring someone with you just to be sure they are who they say they are as well. But I try to categorize them as casual friends. They could be strangers at first online, but then if you've spent some time interacting with them online, they're casual. So if someone says, I'm your partner now, I want to come see you for your birthday, we can say, actually, they can't be your partner until you meet them face to face. And that's true for everyone. I mean, maybe once in a while people meet online and they become married. But usually how it works is you meet somebody online, maybe a dating app, something, and then you meet in a public place to get to know them a little bit better. And then you decide whether you want to see them again. So that's really typically how it works. And so being really clear about that's how it often works. Doesn't even work like that. What do you mean? It doesn't work like that, or I'm not sure. You might be making a
Yeah,
joke. I
like
see.
you say, when someone's your partner, like, can you be my partner? Doesn't like asking someone for something. I don't know.
Yeah. So like a couple, when two people decide they're in a sexual romantic relationship, is that what you're talking about? That it's hard to maybe make those relationships?
I think so.
Yeah, it can be really challenging to make friends, to find someone that would be a great partner. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, all these kinds of things are really tricky. And so we'll talk a little bit about that because we're going to talk about how do you talk to people in these different kinds of relationships, because sometimes that can be it. It's a stranger and you're talking to them like you're really close, and then they feel uncomfortable. So sometimes that can help us in forming our relationships. All right, so this is also, there's some videos that you can watch. There's a link here. You can go to our website, and it's myself and a friend, and we're pretending we're strangers, and then we're pretending that we're coworkers, and then we're pretending that we're really good friends. And you can compare the difference in body language and, how we talk to each other, and, and what you'll see too is that the first greeting is really fast, right? You just kind of go by the stranger. You might smile at them. The second one, it's a little more chatty, going to lunch. Okay, enjoy, and then the last one is a big hug and, oh my God, I haven't seen you. And so you can sort of show the body language around these relationships as well. All right, let me just make sure I covered everything there. I'm going to talk more about the combination that might be helpful too, but I think I may have gotten these questions done. So then we'll talk about public and private, and then, like I said, we'll put these together. So public and private, so this is how I describe it, is public is when other people are there or might be there. It's a place where people can go in and out. There's certain ways of speaking and touch that are okay to do in public, but not all. So there's public touch and public topics, and private touch and private topics as well. They consider themselves in a close relationship, even though they haven't met in person. So that can be tricky too. And how would you know that this person is who they say they are? So it sounds like they video chat, so then you know that it's them, so it might be less scary. But you could also say with this, no matter what, even if you feel like you're really close, just have a hard, fast rule to not send money or accept money online, because that's kind of where it gets tricky. So yeah, that you could say that you're in a really close relationship with so-and-so, you video chat, you're really close, but to not send money, because that's when, if you make that hard, fast rule, and this is for all of us, if you say, I will not send money, if they are there to scam you, they will be gone once you set that boundary. So it's kind of a test that you can do as well. And then work on, how do you help people travel and meet one another, try to get people to be able to meet face to face. Yeah, now part of the culture. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But to have some of those ways to make sure that this person is trustworthy as well. So public and then private is where you're alone, or you could be with someone in private, and no one can come in and out. Certain ways of speaking and touch are okay to do in private, but not in public. So first we're going to look at, well, what are some different ways to teach public or private? So you could ask, this picture here, is this public or private? And if people say public, you can say, how do you know that it's public? Well, there's lots of people there. Okay, but what if you are the only one on the bus, you're way in the back, the bus driver's way up front and can't even see you? Then that would be private, right? Because no one can see you. And again, nope, because people are coming in and out and you aren't alone. This one, a bathroom, and this might depend on your own situation or your family's situation, or the person you're supporting situation, but sometimes bathrooms are considered private. But also, if there's a lot of people living in that space, sometimes bathrooms are not considered private. So there might be some house rules around this as well. But in general, if you can go into the bathroom and shut the door, and people can't come in and out, it is a private place. We also want to talk about public restrooms as well as being public. So anything out in the world is public. At the workplace, even if it's a single stall bathroom, it's still a public restroom. Yes, so not just right, exactly. Same idea, yes. or shared bathrooms in dorms. So really being clear about what are the different kinds of bathrooms and when is it a private bathroom and your bathroom. Yes. And then the movie theater, again, you could say the same thing. It's public, right? There's lots of people there. Well, what if it's just you and your partner and you're way in the back and it's really dark? So that's private, right? And then nope, because people can come in and out. So that's how we're gonna really think and like, is there some privacy? Do I have privacy here? And usually private is at home in your bedroom with the door closed. And if you have a roommate, it's really nice to have private time in your room without a roommate. So to try to schedule that in so that people have some privacy in their own room to listen to music, whatever they want to do to have some private time too. So it's usually at home in your bedroom with the door closed and people can't come in and out. Or potentially the bathroom, the bathroom at home, depending on your living situation. And then this last one's kind of tricky, and that's what we want to talk about too, is like, is this public or private? And it's a little tricky because they're wearing a bathing suit. And so is this a private in their backyard and no one lives around them and they live way out in the country and no one can see? Or is this a park or a beach or something? So it's a little hard to tell, but we can say, let's just say this is a public place, but then we can also talk about what are the public places that you can wear a bathing suit and which ones are you not allowed to wear a bathing suit. So it would be the beach, the pool, the park. That's pretty much it. Okay, I'm looking at a question here. So some individuals do not understand the evolution of a close relationship and what are the stages that are involved in getting to that point. For example, from stranger to later becoming a friend. It's difficult to assist them in developing that relationship because it involves a lot of body language behavior that could be hard to read. Absolutely. And I've had lots of self-advocates say, sometimes it's just easier to ask, like, will you be my friend? To sort of name it rather than trying, or would you go out on a date with me, rather than trying to send these messages. Because, not just people with disabilities, sometimes people miss those messages that you're sending about being interested in more than a friend or more than a stranger or a casual friend. Yeah, and I think one of the things that a lot of people experience is that loneliness. And so there's a desire to get close to people fast. And so remembering that it takes time, the other person has to agree as well. Like you might want to be friends with someone, but they don't want to be friends with you. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just not a good fit for them. So talking about forming relationships. How to manage the use of technology. Yep. And yes. So when I'm teaching classes and we're online, sometimes people are in their bedrooms and they feel like, well, that I'm in my private room, but I'm on Zoom. So when we're on Zoom like this, it's public, even if you're in a private place. So yeah, all of those nuances and gray areas. Yes. Great. Yeah. So consensual benchmarks. Yeah. So sort of like, I'm not totally clear what you mean by that, but I'm thinking you mean like, they invite you over and that shows that you're friends or something along those lines. And I just want to tell you there's a new, if you're familiar with the Impact newsletter, it has lots of great articles, but there's a brand new one right now, and I can put the link in for you. But it's from the University of Minnesota Institute on Community Integration, and this whole issue is on loneliness. So lots of stories from self-advocates about loneliness. And I think what we want to be sure of is that, when people are lonely, they're more desperate. They might put up with negative behavior because it's better than being alone. So addressing loneliness is key here as well. Oh yeah, have you hugged? Yes. So that kind of thing. Right. So particular behaviors. Yep. Yeah. So let me show you a couple of the handouts because that might be helpful right now, just to talk about these combining these together. So in the handouts, we've got this list of public and private places, ways of speaking, topics that we talk about, and ways of touch, and then private as well. And then this is a types of relationship framework. And this might be really helpful in talking about relationships with either for yourself to learn about different kinds of relationships or people you're supporting in some way. But we can also say, and these are part of these benchmarks that are mentioned in the chat, close family and friends. Now you could ask someone like, how do you touch your close family and friends? People that you trust, that you've known a long time, you feel really close to. You feel like those three young girls in that picture. Who are those people in your life? And lots of people hug. It could be different cultures, but you can find out how do you touch people that you're really close with, especially if you haven't seen each other in a long time. Then you can talk about casual friends, groups, all that, coworkers, and helping professionals. The touch is similar. You can fist bump, you can high five, you can shake hands. And so we want to teach that just because we always want to get consent for any kind of touch, but we might want to say, if someone tries to hug you and you don't know them, you might say, oh, wait, hey, let's shake hands instead, So we want to teach some of those boundaries that way. And I think what can happen for people with disabilities is people don't have the same expectations. And so they say, oh, it didn't mean anything, it's fine. But we want to teach people with disabilities that it isn't fine, actually. There are some boundaries that are important to have. And then and then strangers we don't touch at all. And then down to the sexual romantic relationship. I mean, that depends on the relationship. And again, you have to get consent for any kind of touch, but in particular, touch with a partner if you're going to be doing sexual things too. So that kind of looks at the different types and how you interact. Let me go back to the slides and just show you a few more slides, and then we'll talk about the other handout. Yeah, understanding distant family. So I would call that more casual family. They live in California and you're in New Hampshire, right? So you don't know them that well, but you know them. So they're more casual, I would say, than close. Yeah. So let me share my screen again. Whoops, I don't know. Did I not share? Did you all see the handout or was I not sharing then? Oh, darn. Yeah,
We see it now, Katherine. Thank you.
yeah. But I want to show you the handout there's something I have to stop sharing to get to the handout. So hold on, I'm going to just show you again. Sorry about that.
I just want to say there was a really great question about how some neurotypical women might respond differently or males. And it's so really hard because everyone has a different perspective on how they receive an advance or a greeting or a conversation. And so that's why early on, it's so important to teach how to read the room and also to read other people's body language. It's just going to be retaught over and over.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. So I'm sorry, but I wasn't showing this, but this shows you the different types of relationships and then the different kinds of touch that I was mentioning. And then we'll come back to public and private topics too. So you can have conversations about where are some other public places? And what are the public places in your home? So the kitchen, the living room, those are public. Really, the only private place at home is in your bedroom with the door closed, or possibly the bathroom. So there are some public areas in your home as well. And then what's okay to talk about? So then we can talk about what are the different types of topics that we have. So there's public topics. So let me just throw that out to all of you. What do you think are public topics that you can talk about in public? You can talk about them with anyone. What are some examples of public topics? Weather, movies, vacation, the weather, yes. Is it hot enough for you? Right? We say that to lots of people. Sports, the game last night. Yep. Yeah. So these are public topics and we can talk with anyone about them. Pop culture. Did you see the new movie or did you get, I went to the Taylor Swift concert or whatever. Yes. Music. Yeah. Yeah. So these are public topics. And what happens when we talk about private topics like sexual things or our bodies or body parts in public, people get uncomfortable. So an example might be, for example, menstruation. So it's a bodily function, and those are private. It's not bad. It's not a shameful thing. It's just private. And so if you're in school and you're in homeroom and you come in and you tell the whole class that you started your period that morning, it's not the end of the world, right? No one's getting hurt by it. But what happens is people start to feel uncomfortable around others and then they avoid them. And then you're more isolated and then your loneliness increases. And so that's why we talk about public things in public and private things in private, so that it's sort of like the social norms around interacting with others. How can we touch one another in private? So what are some ways, so I'm going to ask all of you, how can you touch someone in public? What are the ways that it's okay to touch people in public? Yeah, so again, yeah, grandmother die might be a private topic. Yep. High fives, handshakes, fist bumps, yes. Any others? Like, I mean, hug, hold hands, great. What about kissing? Tap on the shoulder, yeah, sort of that light touch. What about kissing? Is that a can you kiss in public? May vary, yeah, depending on the cultural norm, depends on the culture, sure, sure, right. Some cultures, you greet someone, you kiss on the cheek, both sides, right? Depends on the context, yeah. So usually public kisses are pretty quick, right? Like a peck on the cheek or a quick kiss. And then you can also ask people like, have you ever been in a restaurant, a public place, and there's a couple in the corner and they aren't just quick kissing. They are kissing, like tongue, everything. And usually people will say TMI or get a room. And really what we're saying is get some privacy. You're doing something private in a public place and I'm feeling uncomfortable. And then also around work environments too, what I often teach is if you have a family member that you work with or a sexual romantic partner that you work with, when you're at work, you're casual with them. So you're not going to hug them when you see them and, talk about private thing, right? You're at work. So you treat everyone like a casual friend, even if they're your mom. Private things, as I mentioned, the topics, but private places we talked about, and body parts. There are body parts that are private as well, so we keep them covered when we're in public. Um, and then things we can talk about anything in private, but we want to talk about private things in a private place. And then who's it okay to talk about private things with? So let me show you that handout again. And again, this is in general, it's not, you might have to tweak this, but you can talk to close family and friends about private things and public things, right? You're close to them, but when you talk about private things, you want to be in a private place, right? Casual friends, we're going to talk about public things. Coworkers, public things. Helping professional, it depends on the helping professional. And that was brought up earlier today. So most helping professionals, no, the person at the deli counter, no, we're not going to talk about private things with them, but we might talk to a doctor or a nurse when we're in an exam room and the door is closed. You might talk about private things. You might talk about private things with your teacher because you're having a problem and you need help, or the school nurse, or HR at your workplace, so there are helping professionals that we do talk about private things, but many we don't. So that's one we have to get clear about in people's lives as well. Their psychotherapist, exactly, another person you can talk about private things with. Yep. And then people we don't know or strangers, we can talk about public things with strangers. Some people choose not to. It's really more of a preference whether you like to talk to strangers or not. And so, but it's okay to talk about public things, but we wouldn't talk about private things. Validate sadness. Yeah. Oh, tell everyone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. But we could say that talking about, we can tell people that somebody died, but once they know, we really want to talk only to people we're close with about it. Yeah. And then sexual romantic relationships, we can talk about public and private things with them, but again, private things in a private place. Yeah. And also when we're first meeting people too. Oh no, was I not sharing again? I wasn't. So sorry. There's something about Zoom today that won't let me go between the two. So here we've got the different topics that you can talk about with the different people. So this is a great guideline, guidelines for relationships and maybe avoiding crossing a line by understanding some of this. Again, sometimes it's not dangerous or anything. It could be, but sometimes it's just telling too much and making people feel uncomfortable. And then people start to avoid you as well. And this we'll talk about what are the ways we can touch our own bodies in private and some examples of ways we touch someone else in private, and always talking about consent as well. Yeah, and a social story about how that you can show your body parts to a doctor because they're making you healthy, or helping keep you healthy. You can also say sometimes you have to show your body parts when someone is supporting you with bathing or diapering or something. And maybe when you're in a sexual romantic relationship, you'll want to show someone your body parts, your private body parts, and have them touch them, but that has to be done in private, and you always have to have consent. And then sometimes we might have to advocate for ourselves around having privacy too. Sometimes that can come up is somebody doesn't have privacy at all. So it's hard for them to be with a partner or be by themselves. And again, the project search example is two people in a relationship don't have any privacy, but they're at work. So they find privacy at work and they get fired. And loves to hug her little sister. Okay, and hates hugs. Yep. Any suggestions? Yeah, there's a great video. I'm going to just put the name of it that might be helpful. And you can Google it. It may be on some of the resource lists as well, but Consent for Kids. And it really talks about bodily autonomy. And that's a great one to use. Yes. Okay. So how do we advocate? I showed you the handout. We sort of looked at all this already. So I'm just going to skip through that. Looks like there's some repetition, but here's also a scenario that you can use. And I'm going to wrap up soon so we can see if there's any other questions that I might have missed or anything like that. But here's an example of something you can do to talk about the different kinds of relationships and the type of talk, the topics. So Ashley and Isabel work together in a store. Ashley's in a chair and begins working. Ashley sees Isabel and says, "Hi, Isabel, how are you today?" And Isabella says, "I'm good. Hey, what did you do last weekend?" And Ashley looks up from her work and says, "I spent time with friends." Ashley looks back down at her work. So again, that body language, like I'm working, body language. And then, "Who are you with? You're not wearing a ring. Do you have a boyfriend? You should try to meet someone. Are you old enough? Do you want a boyfriend or a girlfriend?" And then Ashley looks uncomfortable. So then you can debrief this as well with these questions. Why do you think that Ashley's uncomfortable? What is Isabella doing that is not okay? Why is that not okay? What can Ashley do since she's feeling uncomfortable? So then it's that other side of it. If someone's crossed a boundary of yours, and how do you speak up? And what can she say to her. And it could be something like, I'm sorry, but that's private, or you're asking me personal questions I don't want to answer, or when I'm at work, I really only talk about, I don't talk about private things. So practice speaking up too. And I know some people talk about like a bug and a wish. So you can say that bugs me or that bothers me when blah, blah, blah. I wish that you wouldn't ask me personal questions at work. So we can also make it simple in that way, but it's hard to speak up. And people often say that they feel like they're going to hurt people's feelings by speaking up. And that means we're taking care of their feelings over our own. And the other thing in that video on consent for kids is sometimes we teach that we teach young kids to take care of other people's feelings and not their own. So if we say, Aunt Anne is leaving, give her a hug, and the kid says, I don't want to, I'm not comfortable with that. And we say, do you want to hurt Aunt Anne's feelings? So what we're saying is your feelings don't matter, other people's feelings matter more. So we want to make sure that we reinforce Aunt Anne is leaving. How would you like to say goodbye to her? So that they have some choice and comfort in it. And maybe they'll hug her, right? But giving that choice and not forcing this sort of affection as well. So those are pieces of bodily autonomy. We want to say it's your body, you get to decide what's right for you. Right. Yeah. So again, talking about sex is private. You can take out the handout and say, you can talk about private things with me at home, with your therapist when you're in counseling. You know, where are the places and who are the people that your son can talk about it with as well? Yeah. So great question around dating. I'm just going to just see what else I don't think I have much. Yeah, I was just going to ask for questions. So wonderful. Yeah. So as far as dating, and let me just get, can you share some important dating rules, boundaries? Yes. So one of the things that I teach is, you know, you can ask someone to be your friend or to do something with you. And if they say no, you can ask for something different. So if I say, will you go out to the movies with me? And my friend said, this person says, no, I don't want to. You could say, well, do you want to go for coffee at the coffee shop? Do you want to go for a walk in the park? And if you get a second no, it's time to move on. So I think sometimes having some of that structure, because sometimes people will keep asking and keep asking the same thing of the same person, right? And then that becomes harassing. So you could ask for something different and then move on. And how we move on, I refer to as gracefully, which means you say, okay, I understand. Even though when people say no to us, it hurts, we feel sad, it can feel like rejection, but we have to take care of those feelings. It's not the other person's job to take care of our feelings. So if we're feeling sad, it's not their fault. We can't yell at them for saying no to us. They have the right to say no, even if it hurts us. There's also on the resource list, there are 4 empowerment videos for people with disabilities. And one of them is on consent and talks a lot about how to say no to people, even if it hurts their feelings. So it's a lot of people with disabilities giving advice around that too. Right, right, right. For those who are blind or visually impaired, how can we teach them when they cannot read the room or see visual social cues when interacting socially? I think that's a great question. And I'm sort of curious what other people think. Are there ways that you can hear some things that are helpful because you can't see body language? But it might be kind of like if you say something, what's the response you're getting? Is it positive? Are they saying the same? Are they giggling? Are they well, they can't see leaning forward, but are they engaging with you when you're flirting with them? Um, or verbally ask. Yeah, I think that's what a lot of self-advocates say. It's just too hard to miss the signals, or if you're visually impaired, see the signals too. So giving permission to ask straightforward questions. Yeah. So do you mind if I ask you, I'm going to ask you some straightforward questions so that I can really understand um, our relationship. Notice the paralanguage of people. Can you say more about what that means? Tone of voice, verbal prompting, tone of voice. Gotcha. Thank you. Relearning social rules is so important. As my son ages, I think a lot of people expect him to remember so much, but your point about being lonely, wanting to engage fast is well taken. Social story reminders, tools would help so much for him still. Yes, right, right. We're not just saying it once. It's going to come up many, many times. But I think, Anne, I don't know if you saw any other questions. I think I covered all them, but I wanted to give you enough time to wrap things up too.
Yeah, I think we're good, Catherine. The questions are so engaging, and everything you ask, I'm sure, is helping other people. This was such an important conversation. I'm going to put in the chat box what we'll be talking about next week. Catherine, very important. And we want to remember that teaching these skills and providing this important education is going to have better transition outcomes, whether in the community day program or a day hub, a group home, in other social situations to prevent exploitation, preventing from abuse, but also more positive social interactions. Catherine, could you put up your contact information again?
Yes.
And I do want to reinforce that it's so important. Catherine, I didn't do it this time, but if you could add how to subscribe to your newsletter, because everyone is such a treasure trove of great information. Thank you. So I'd like to just let you know that if you wanted more information on this, Catherine or I can help you. We do have one-on-one support through our transition team, including around this topic of sexuality and healthy relationships that will lead to better transition programming and supports. And if you take your camera, you can scan the QR code. I will also add my contact information here. And next slide, please, Janine. Thanks, Janine, for this wonderful presentation. We have a Facebook group. Again, get your camera out. These conversations are building your community support. And the community support is how you will better navigate transition, whether we're talking about sexuality or vocational or benefits. So please join our Facebook community. Thank you, everyone. You'll get a copy of the recordings, the links. We'll see you same time for our last session next week. And again, what we will be talking about is really important, the age of technology. I'm sure some of you are grappling with some challenges in this domain. We've reached the top of the hour, Catherine. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Great to be here with everyone.
Have a beautiful day.